The silence in the Galactic Council chamber was heavy and thick. Captain Daejung stood alone in the center of the massive circular room, his dark uniform clean and pressed. Above him, suspended in the air by technology he did not fully understand, sat the representatives of 12 alien civilizations. They looked down at him like judges preparing to pass sentence on a criminal. Daejun kept his face calm. He had been standing there for 3 hours now, listening to their accusations. His legs were tired, but he did not move. He would not show weakness. Not here. Not now. Counselor Vrek spoke again, his voice buzzing through the translation device. The Thalon looked like a massive insect, with 4 arms and eyes that glowed red in the dim light. Humanity has violated 73 territorial agreements. You have colonized 200 systems in just 50 years. This aggression cannot continue. High Archon, Kellis added his voice, the crystalline being's words chiming like breaking glass. We have shown patience with your species. We welcomed you to the galactic community. And this is how you repay our kindness? By stealing worlds that do not belong to you? Other voices joined in, overlapping each other. The Morvath Empire complained about human ships near their borders. The Velkin Collective accused Earth of stealing technology. The Draxian hierarchy claimed humans were breeding too fast, expanding too quickly. On and on it went, each species adding their grievances to the pile. Daejung listened to it all. He did not interrupt. He did not defend. He simply stood there, his hands clasped behind his back, his eyes moving from one speaker to another. Lieutenant Hannah stood behind him, silent and still. She was the only other human allowed in the chamber. Finally, after what felt like forever, the voices stopped. Counselor Vrex leaned forward in his floating seat. The council has reached a decision. Humanity will surrender control of 75% of your colonies. You will submit to galactic law. You will accept council oversight of all future expansion. You will pay reparations for the harm you have caused. These terms are not negotiable. The chamber fell silent again. All eyes turned to Daejun. This was the moment they had been building toward. This was where humanity would bow its head and accept the will of the galaxy. Darjung took a slow breath. He looked up at the alien faces surrounding him, at the beings who thought they held all the power. Then he spoke, his voice clear and steady. The word echoed in the chamber. For a moment, no one moved. No one spoke. It was as if time itself had frozen. Vrex's mandibles clicked in confusion. What did you say? I said no, Daejung repeated. Humanity rejects your terms. We will not surrender our colonies. We will not bow to your laws. We will not pay for crimes we did not commit. The chamber erupted. Voices shouted in dozens of languages, the translation devices struggling to keep up. Some aliens stood from their seats. Others slammed appendages against their consoles. The noise was deafening. Daejun waited for them to quiet down. It took several minutes. When the chamber finally fell silent again, he continued. You call us aggressive. You say we expand too quickly. But let me tell you what I see. He turned slowly, making eye contact with each council member. I see species that have held power for thousands of years. I see empires that grew comfortable. I see civilizations that forgot what it means to struggle, to fight, to earn your place in the universe. How dare you, Kellis said, his voice sharp. We have built wonders across the galaxy while your species was still living in caves. Perhaps Daejun agreed. But we are not in caves anymore. And we did not get here by asking permission. Vrex's red eyes glowed brighter. You cannot stand against the entire Galactic Council. 12 species united. Thousands of worlds. Millions of ships. You are one species. You are children playing with technology you barely understand. Daejun smiled. It was not a warm smile. Then let me educate you. He pulled a small device from his pocket and pressed a button. A hologram appeared in the center of the chamber, floating above Daejung's head. It showed Earth, the blue and green world that humanity called home. Then the image zoomed out, showing the Sol system. Then further, revealing humanity's 200 colonies spread across space. You see expansion, Daejun said. We see survival. You see aggression? We see preparation. The hologram changed. Now it showed ships. Thousands upon thousands of ships, all bearing Earth's markings. Battleships the size of cities, carriers that could hold entire armies, destroyers that moved like sharks through the void of space. The numbers kept climbing. 5,000 ships. 10,000. 15,000. The aliens in the chamber grew very quiet. While you were comfortable in your power, Daejun continued, we were building. While you assumed we would always be weak, we were learning. While you thought you could dictate terms to us, we were preparing for this exact moment. He paused, letting his words sink in. You asked for humanity's response to your ultimatum. Let me be very clear. He looked directly at Vrex. War, the word fell like a hammer. No one spoke. No one moved. That is insane, Kellis finally said. You would doom your entire species over pride? Not pride, Daejun corrected. Principle. We will not surrender what we have built. We will not submit to laws we had no part in creating. We will not allow you to decide our fate. He turned toward the chamber's main exit. Hannah, we are leaving. You cannot just walk out of this chamber, Vrex shouted. We are the Galactic Council. We rule this galaxy. Daejun stopped at the door. He looked back over his shoulder. You ruled this galaxy. Past tense. As of this moment, everything changes. He and Hannah walked out. The massive doors closed behind them with a thunderous boom. In the chamber, chaos erupted. Counselors shouted at each other, demanding explanations, calling for military action, arguing about what to do next. Rex tried to restore order, but even his voice was lost in the noise. High Archon Kellis sat quietly in his seat, staring at the hologram that still floated in the chamber. The image of human ships, so many ships, more than any single species should possess. A cold feeling spread through his crystalline body. It was a sensation he had not felt in centuries. It took him a moment to identify it. Fear on the human ship departing from Valora Prime. Hannah stood beside Daejun on the bridge. Sir, do you think they understood? Daejun watched the council station shrink in the view screen. They will. He pressed a button on his console. Admiral Taman, you are cleared for approach? On the edge of the system, reality tore open. One by one, human warships dropped out of faster-than-light travel. They surrounded Valora Prime in a perfect sphere, 5,000 vessels blocking every approach and exit. Their weapons were not powered up. Their shields were not active. They did not need to be. Their presence alone delivered the message. Inside the council chamber, alarms began to blare. Counselors rushed to their stations, pulling up sensor data. Verix stared at the displays in disbelief. They planned this, he whispered. They knew exactly what we would say. They knew exactly how we would react. They were ready. Kellis stood slowly from his seat. We have made a terrible mistake. We have awakened something that should have stayed sleeping. Rex looked at him. What do we do now? Kellis had no answer. For the first time in his long life, he truly did not know. The humans had declared war, and the galaxy would never be the same. 3 weeks had passed since humanity declared war. The Galactic Council had spent those weeks preparing their response, gathering their forces, and planning their attack. They would teach these arrogant humans a lesson. They would show Earth what happened to species that defied the Council. The Thalan Dominion would strike first. Counselor Vrex had volunteered his people for this honor. The Thalan military was strong, experienced, and ruthless. They had conquered 40 systems over the past 1,000 years. Surely one human colony would fall quickly. The target was Novo Sol, a mining colony on the edge of human space. Intelligence reports said it had minimal defenses, just a few orbital platforms and a small garrison. It would be easy. The Thalan fleet consisted of 800 warships, more than enough to overwhelm such a minor outpost. Admiral. Taman stood on the bridge of the human dreadnought, indomitable, watching the Thalan fleet approach on his screens. Around him, officers worked quietly at their stations. There was no panic, no rushing, just calm, Professional focus. Enemy fleet entering weapons range, reported a young officer. Let them come closer, Taman said quietly. He was an older man with gray hair and eyes that had seen too many battles. Wait for my command. The Thalan ships moved into attack formation. They were confident. Their ships were larger than the human vessels protecting Novo's soul. Their weapons were more advanced, or so they thought. They had numbers on their side. Vrex watched from his flagship, his mandibles clicking with anticipation. All ships, begin the attack. Show these humans what happens when they defy the Council. The Thalan fleet opened fire. Plasma bolts and energy beams streaked across space toward the human orbital platforms. The weapons hit their targets, and the platforms exploded in bright flashes of light. Vrex felt satisfaction. This was going exactly as planned. Then the human ships fired back. What happened next would be replayed across the galaxy for years to come. The human V. Easels moved with impossible speed, their engines burning bright as they scattered in dozens of different directions. Railguns fired solid projectiles at a fraction of light speed. Missile pods opened, launching thousands of warheads that weaved and dodged through space. Energy weapons, more powerful than anything the Thalan had expected, carved through shields like they were nothing in the first 60 seconds of combat. 300 Thalan ships ceased to exist. Vrex could not believe what he was seeing. His fleet was dying. Ships exploded all around him. His officers shouted reports, but he could barely hear them over the sound of alarms blaring throughout his flagship. Evasive maneuvers, he ordered. All ships, fall back and regroup. But the human ships did not let them retreat. They pursued like predators chasing wounded prey. Commander Yuna led a squadron of human fighters, small craft that moved through space with deadly grace. Her voice was calm on the communication channel as she directed her pilots. Break into pairs. Alpha Group hit their engines. Beta Group, target their weapons. Make every shot count. Her fighter dove toward a Thalan cruiser, dodging defensive fire with movements that seemed impossible. The alien gunners could not track her. She was too fast, too unpredictable. She fired missiles at close range, and the cruiser's engine section exploded. The massive ship went dark and began to drift. Target down, Yuna reported. Moving to next objective. All across the battlefield, the same scene repeated. Human pilots flew with precision that the Thalan could not match. Human gunners hit targets that should have been impossible to strike. Human commanders anticipated every Thalan maneuver and responded with devastating efficiency. Admiral Taman watched it all with cold satisfaction. Target their flagship. I want Vrex to understand who he is fighting. 6 human destroyers converged on Vrex's position. They fired in perfect coordination, their weapons hammering against the flagship's shields. The shields held for perhaps 10 seconds. Then they collapsed. The next volley punched through the armor, tore into the ship's interior. Vrex was thrown from his seat as his ship shook violently. Damage report. Hull breaches on 12 decks. Life support failing. Main weapons offline. Shields at 0. Vrex looked at his screens. His fleet was gone. 800 ships reduced to scattered debris and disabled hulks. The humans had lost maybe 30 vessels. Maybe. Open a channel, he said quietly. I wish to negotiate surrender. The human response came immediately. It was Admiral Taman's face on the screen, hard and unforgiving. There is no surrender. You attacked us. Now face the consequences. The communication cut off. A moment later, more missiles struck Vrex's flagship. The ship broke apart, and Vrex barely made it to an escape pod before the command deck was exposed to vacuum. As his pod drifted away from the dying ship, Vrex watched human vessels move through the wreckage, methodically destroying every Thalan ship that remained. There was no mercy, no hesitation. The humans fought with a cold efficiency that terrified him. This was not how wars were fought in the galaxy. Usually, there were rules. When shields fell, you surrendered. When ships were disabled, they were captured, not destroyed. War was supposed to be civilized, but the humans did not fight civilized wars. News of the disaster at Novos Sol spread across the galaxy within hours. The Galactic Council convened in an emergency session. Counselors who had been so confident 3 weeks ago now looked worried. "This changes nothing," declared the representative from the Morvath Empire. "So, they won one battle. We have thousands of worlds, millions of ships. We will crush them through sheer numbers." But even as he spoke, reports came in of more human attacks. Captain Bora led ground forces in an assault on a Thalen military base. Her soldiers moved with terrifying coordination, using tactics the aliens had never seen. They did not charge directly into enemy fire like most galactic armies. Instead, they used cover, suppression fire, and flanking maneuvers. The Thalen defenders had more troops and better defensive positions. It should have been enough. But the humans attacked from 3 directions simultaneously, used smoke and electronic warfare to confuse their enemies, and called in precision orbital strikes that destroyed key targets. Without harming civilian areas nearby, the battle lasted 6 hours. When it ended, the human flag flew over the base. Bora's casualties were light. The Thalen defenders had been completely defeated. Similar reports came from across the war zone. Everywhere the Council forces engaged humans, they lost. Not just narrowly. They were being destroyed. The numbers were staggering. For every human soldier killed, 50 aliens died. For every human ship destroyed, 20 alien vessels were turned into debris. The Morvath Empire sent their best fleet to engage human forces near the border. The Morvath were considered the finest military power in the galaxy. Their ships were legends. Their admirals had centuries of experience. They lasted 3 days. Admiral Taman's fleet met them at battle and demonstrated what humanity had learned. From thousands of years of warfare on Earth, the humans used combined arms tactics that the Morvath had never encountered. Fighters provided reconnaissance. Destroyers disrupted enemy formations. Capital ships delivered devastating firepower at critical moments. Every element worked together like parts of a single organism. The Morvath admiral tried every strategy he knew. He attempted flanking maneuvers, defensive formations, even retreating to draw the humans into a trap. Nothing worked. The humans anticipated every move and countered it perfectly. When the battle ended, the Morvath fleet was gone. The admiral's flagship drifted in space, engines dead, life support failing. Admiral Taman's face appeared on every screen throughout the ship. "You wanted war with humanity," he said, his voice carrying to every survivor on every disabled ship. "Now you understand what that means. Tell your leaders. Tell your people. Tell the entire galaxy. This is what happens when you threaten Earth." The message was broadcast across the entire sector. Within hours, it reached every world in the Galactic Council. People watched in horror as they saw the wreckage of what had been the galaxy's most powerful fleet. On the Council station, Kellis stood before a massive view screen showing the latest casualty reports. 5 species had already sued for peace separately. The coalition was breaking apart. Thousands of ships destroyed, tens of thousands dead, and the humans showed no signs of slowing down. "We did not understand," he said quietly. "We thought they were like us, species that grew up in peace, that learned warfare from books and simulations." He turned to face Vrex, who had survived his ship's destruction and returned to the Council. "But they are not like us. They grew up on a world that tried to kill them every day. They learned warfare by practicing it on each other for thousands of years. They have been preparing for war their entire existence." Rex's voice was hollow. "What have we done?" Kellis had no answer. The galaxy was learning fear, and the teacher was humanity. 3 months into the war, and the galaxy no longer recognized itself. The Galactic Council, once the supreme authority over thousands of worlds, was crumbling. Species that had stood united against humanity were now suing for peace individually, desperate to save what remained of their civilizations. Captain Daejung stood in what had once been a Velkan diplomatic hall. The room was beautiful, with walls made of crystal that caught the light and spread it in rainbow patterns, but the beauty felt hollow now. Outside the windows, he could see human warships patrolling the skies. This world had surrendered 2 weeks ago, Across the table from him sat Ambassador Trell of the Velkin Collective. The Velkin were tall, graceful beings who prided themselves on their culture and refinement. Trell looked tired. His silver skin had lost its usual glow. "We wish to discuss terms of peace," Trell said quietly. Dao Yang nodded. "I am listening." The Velkin Collective acknowledges that we were wrong to support the Council's ultimatum. We ask for fair treatment of our people and the return of our sovereignty. "Those terms are acceptable," Dagun replied. "Humanity has no desire to occupy your worlds permanently. We simply want assurance that you will not attack us again." Trell looked surprised. "That is all? You could demand tribute. Reparations. You have one. We won because we had to," Daejung said. "Not because we wanted to. There is a difference." This scene repeated across the galaxy. One by one, species approached humanity seeking peace. The Draxian Hierarchy, the Korthon Federation, the Cenari League. All of them came with the expectation that Earth would demand harsh terms, would take revenge for the insult of the ultimatum. All of them were surprised when humanity asked for nothing except non-aggression treaties. But not all species surrendered. The Morvath Empire and the Thalan Dominion refused to accept defeat. They had been the most powerful voices on the Council. They had the most to lose if humanity's rebellion succeeded, so they fought on, even as their fleets were destroyed and their worlds fell. Lieutenant Heian sat in an intelligence center on a human carrier, reviewing data streams from across the war zone. She was young but brilliant, with a mind that could see patterns others missed. On her screens, she tracked troop movements, supply lines, and communication intercepts. "We have been inside their networks for years," she explained to a group of newly arrived officers. Before the war even started, we had intelligence agents embedded in every Council species. We knew their military capabilities, their political divisions, their economic weaknesses. When they threatened us, we already knew exactly how to defeat them. One of the officers, a man who had just arrived from Earth, looked shocked. "We were spying on them the whole time. While we were supposedly at peace?" Hyun gave him a level look. "We were preparing. Earth's leaders knew this day would come eventually." The Council grew used to being obeyed. They forgot that power requires respect, not just fear. We had to be ready for when they decided to remind us of our place. Dr. Sung-ho worked in a research facility aboard one of Earth's massive science vessels. He was surrounded by pieces of alien technology, items captured during the war. He and his team studied every component, every system, every design principle. "Look at this," he said to his assistant, holding up a fragment of a Morvath power core. "Their technology is more advanced than ours in some ways. More efficient energy generation, better materials, but they never had to innovate. They found designs that worked and stuck with them for centuries." "And we?" his assistant asked. "We improve constantly. We iterate. We test. Every generation of human ships is better than the last because we are always pushing forward. They built for stability. We built for evolution. It was this difference that defined the war. The Council species had ancient technology and vast resources. But humanity had something more valuable: adaptability. When the Morvath deployed a new shield system that could resist human railguns, human engineers developed plasma torpedoes. When the Thalans started using stealth ships, human sensors were upgraded to detect them. Every time the aliens adapted, humanity adapted faster. Admiral Taman's fleet arrived at the edge of Morvath space. His forces had grown to include ships from allied species, former Council members who had joined humanity's side. The fleet numbered over 10,000 vessels now, the largest armada the galaxy had seen in living memory. High Archon Kellis watched them come. He stood in his crystal tower on the Morvath homeworld, staring up at the sky as the human ships blotted out the stars. He had lived for 3,000 years. He had seen empires rise and fall, but he had never imagined his own would be among them. The humans. Broadcast their terms. Simple, straightforward, surrender now and face reasonable peace terms. Continue fighting and face total defeat. They gave the Morvath 72 hours to decide. Kellis called an emergency session of the Morvath High Council. The chamber was filled with his people's greatest leaders, commanders, scientists, and politicians. They argued for hours about what to do. "We cannot surrender," one general insisted. "We are the Morvath Empire. We have stood for 5,000 years. If we surrender to these humans, we admit they are our superiors." "They have already proven they are superior," Kellis said quietly, "at least in warfare. The question is whether we accept that reality or die denying it." "Perhaps we should negotiate," suggested a diplomat. "Offer them technology, resources, territory. Surely they want something." Kellis shook his head. "I have studied these humans carefully. They do not want tribute. They do not want to rule us. They simply want us to stop threatening them. It is almost incomprehensible to us, but I believe it is true." "Then what do they want?" the general demanded. "Respect," Kellis answered. "They want to be treated as equals. Nothing more, nothing less." The vote was close, but eventually the Morvath High Council agreed to surrender. Kellis personally delivered the message to Admiral Taman. The two met aboard a neutral vessel, with observers from several species present. "The Morvath Empire acknowledges defeat," Kellis said formally. "We will abide by your terms." Taman nodded. "Your empire will retain its sovereignty. Your people will not be occupied or enslaved. In return, you will dismantle your offensive military capabilities and accept human oversight of your defense forces for the next 10 years. "Those terms are generous," Kellis admitted. "More generous than we deserve." "May I ask why?" Taman considered the question carefully. "Because we remember what it is like to be threatened. Earth was not always united. We fought wars among ourselves for thousands of years. Terrible wars. We learned the hard way that making your enemy desperate only makes the war worse. You are defeated. There is no need to humiliate you." Kellis felt something he had not expected. Gratitude. These humans, who had every right to demand vengeance, were offering mercy instead. It made their victory somehow more complete. The fall of the Morvath Empire sent shockwaves across the galaxy. If even the mighty Morvath could not stand against humanity, who could? Within days, the remaining council species began to reconsider their position. Only the Thalan Dominion fought on. Vrex refused to surrender. He had survived the disaster at Novo Sol, had witnessed his fleet's destruction. Pride would not let him accept defeat. He rallied what remained of his forces for one final assault on a human colony world. The battle was brief and brutal. Human forces crushed the Thalan fleet in less than 2 hours. Vrex's flagship was boarded by human marines. He expected to be killed or imprisoned. Instead, he was brought before Captain Bora, who had led the boarding action. "The war is over," Bora told him. "Your people are defeated, but you can still save them from further suffering. Order your forces to stand down." Vrex looked at her with his red eyes. "Why do you show mercy?" "We attacked you. We called you inferior. We tried to destroy you." "Yes," Bora agreed. "But we are not fighting this war because we enjoy it. We fight because you forced us to. The moment you stop fighting, we stop as well. That is the human way." Vrex made the call. The Thalan Dominion surrendered. Across the galaxy, the last council military forces laid down their weapons. 6 months after humanity declared war, it was over. Dayung stood once again in the Galactic Council chamber. But now it was different. The chamber had been rebuilt after damage from the early fighting. Human engineers had helped with the reconstruction. The council members who sat in their floating seats looked different now. Smaller somehow. Less sure of themselves. Dajun addressed them calmly. "Humanity proposes a new galactic council. One where decisions are made by consensus, not by the powerful dictating to the weak. One where every species has a voice, regardless of how long they have been in space or how many worlds they control. One based on respect rather than fear." Kellis was the first to stand. "The Morvath Empire supports this proposal." One by one, other species added their support. The old Galactic Council was dead. Something new was being born. And at its heart was a simple principle that humanity had learned through thousands of years of hard experience. Peace built on justice lasts longer than peace built on submission. Outside the chamber, human ships maintained their positions throughout the galaxy, not as occupiers, but as guardians. The message was clear. Humanity would not rule the galaxy, but no one would threaten humanity again. 6 months after the war began, the galaxy was unrecognizable. Human forces occupied 30 major council worlds, not as conquerors, but as peacekeepers. The old power structures had collapsed. Species that once commanded fear now begged for mercy. And in the center of it all stood humanity. Victorious, but not celebrating, Captain Daejung walked through the reconstructed Galactic Council chamber. The room had been damaged during the early fighting, and human engineers had helped rebuild it. The new design kept the circular layout, but added something the old chamber had lacked: seats at ground level. No more floating thrones, looking down on those who came to speak. Everyone would meet as equals now. Commander Hannah followed him, her tablet displaying casualty reports and reconstruction updates. She had been promoted after the Battle of Valora Prime, where she had coordinated the defense against a desperate council counterattack. Now she served as Daejung's chief of staff. The last holdout forces surrendered this morning, she reported. The war is officially over. Daejung nodded but did not smile. How many did we lose? Total human casualties: 100,000 military personnel. 17,000 civilians in the attacks on our colonies. The number hung in the air. 117,000 people. Fathers, mothers, sons, daughters. All dead because the Council had been too arrogant to accept humanity as equals, and the Council's species. Daejung asked quietly. Hannah hesitated. Estimated at 3 million military deaths. Perhaps 500,000 civilian casualties, mostly from collateral damage in space battles near populated systems. Daejung closed his eyes. With Sepher Wennen and Van Weth Evethethen Redden thing they for that there and said when Ella and Ran Cesar SF Thatha and said why they are F was. Yes, they had started the war. Yes, they had given humanity no choice. But that did not make the deaths easier to accept. Victory tasted like ash in his mouth. The chamber doors opened. Counselor Vrex entered, walking slowly. He had aged during the war. His exoskeleton, once shining and strong, now looked dull and cracked. Behind him came other council representatives, each one bearing the marks of defeat. Vrex stopped before Daejung. For a long moment, the two simply looked at each other. Then Vrex did something no one expected. He knelt. His 4 legs folded beneath him, and he lowered his head. On behalf of the Thalan Dominion, Vrex said, his voice barely above a whisper. I apologize. We were wrong. We treated you as inferiors when you deserved respect. We threatened you when we should have welcomed you. We started a war we could not win. The fault is ours. Other council members followed his example. One by one, they knelt or bowed or prostrated themselves according to their species' customs. It was an unprecedented display of submission. Daejung felt uncomfortable watching it. This was not what he wanted. Not what humanity wanted. Stand up, he said firmly. All of you. Stand up. Slowly, hesitantly, they rose. Vrex looked confused. You are the victors. We are the defeated. Is it not proper that we show submission? No, Daejung said. It is not. Humanity did not fight this war to see you kneel. We fought because you gave us no choice. Because you threatened everything we had built. But now the war is over. You are not our slaves. You are not our subjects. You are species that made a mistake and paid for it. Nothing more. Khalees stepped forward. The crystalline being moved slowly, his body chiming softly with each step. You confuse us, Captain Daejung. You have won total victory. The galaxy is yours to command. Yet you demand nothing. You take nothing. You act as if this war never happened. The war happened, Daejung replied. People died. Worlds burned. Those things cannot be undone, but we can choose what happens next. And humanity chooses peace, not submission, not revenge. Peace. An ancient voice spoke from the shadows at the edge of the chamber. You are a remarkable species. Everyone turned. From the darkness emerged a being that few had seen in living memory. She was tall and thin, with skin that seemed to shift between solid and translucent. Elder Myrus, founder of the Galactic Council, survivor of 10,000 years. Myrus moved to the center of the chamber with surprising grace for her age. I have lived for 100 centuries. I have seen 1,000 species rise and fall. I helped create this council when the galaxy was young and chaotic. I have seen empires built on strength and empires built on wisdom. But I have never seen a species quite like yours. She stopped before Daeyun and studied him with eyes that held the weight of ages. You terrify me, human. Not because of your weapons. Not because of your tactical brilliance. You terrify me because you know when to stop. Daeyun met her gaze. I do not understand. Throughout this war, Myrus continued, you could have done terrible things. When you captured our worlds, you could have enslaved the populations. When you defeated our fleets, you could have executed the survivors. When you stood victorious, you could have demanded tribute and worship. But you did none of these things. Do you know why that is terrifying? Why? Hannah asked. Because it means you understand power, Mira said. True power. Not the power to destroy, but the power to choose not to destroy. That is the rarest and most dangerous power in the universe. Most species never learn it. They conquer until someone conquers them in turn. The cycle continues forever. But you, she looked around at all the humans present. You are different. Admiral Taman entered the chamber, still in his military uniform. He had commanded the final battles of the war and overseen the occupation of Council worlds. Despite his age, he looked strong and alert. The fleets are standing down, he reported to Daejun. Weapons are being powered down. Orbital platforms are switching to civilian mode. The transition to peace is underway. Thank you, Admiral, Daejun said. Then he turned back to the assembled council members. Humanity has prepared terms for the reconstruction. We will help rebuild damaged infrastructure on your worlds. We will share technology and resources. In return, we ask only that you accept humans as equals in the galactic community. That is all? Frex asked, disbelief clear in his voice. You want nothing else? We want one more thing, Daeyun admitted. We want to ensure this never happens again. Not to us. Not to any other species. The old council was corrupt. It used its power to bully and threaten. The new council must be different. He activated a hologram in the center of the room. It showed a new governmental structure, one with checks and balances, with representation based on population and merit rather than age and military strength, with laws that protected small species from exploitation by large ones. This is what humanity proposes, Daejung said. A true galactic community. Not an empire, not a dictatorship. A community of equals. Council members studied the hologram in silence. Kellis was the first to speak. You have thought this through carefully. How long have you been planning this? Since before the war, Daeyun admitted. Earth's leaders knew the old system was unstable. We hoped to reform it peacefully. When that failed, we prepared for war. But we always intended for this to be the outcome. Myrus laughed, a sound like wind chimes in a storm. Magnificent. You fought a war not to win, but to change the rules. You are not conquerors. You are reformers who happen to be very good at warfare. We are survivors, Daeyun corrected. That is what Earth teaches. Survival means adapting. It means changing when the situation demands it. The old council could not adapt, so it fell. He looked around at all the alien faces, at the species that had threatened humanity and lost everything because of it. We offer you a choice. Join us in building something better, or return to your worlds and remain isolated. But if you choose isolation, know that humanity will not forget what happened here. We will defend ourselves if threatened again, and next time we will not be merciful. The threat was clear, but so was the offer. Work with humanity or face humanity. There was no middle ground anymore. Kellis stepped forward. The Morvath Empire accepts your terms. We will join the new council. The Thalan Dominion agrees. One by one, every species present added their acceptance. Even those that had fought hardest against humanity now recognized the truth. The old galaxy was gone. A new one was being born. And humanity stood at its center, not because they wanted to rule, but because no one else was strong enough or wise enough to rebuild what had been destroyed. As the meeting concluded and the council members filed out, Myris approached Daejung one last time. I have a question, human. What happens when you make a mistake? When your power corrupts you, as it corrupted us? Daejung smiled grimly. Then I hope there is another species out there like us. One that has learned from a harsh world. One that knows how to fight. One that will do to us what we did to you. That is the price of power, Elder Myris. Someone must always be ready to check it. Myris studied him for a long moment. Then she bowed, a gesture of respect that shocked everyone present. May your species live long enough to learn wisdom, and may the galaxy survive your education. She left. The chamber emptied. Soon only Daejun and Hannah remained. Do you think it will work? Hannah asked. This new council? This new system? Daejung looked up at the ceiling, at the stars visible through the transparent dome. I do not know. But we have to try. The alternative is endless war. And humanity has had enough of war. For now, Hannah said quietly. For now, Daejung agreed. 1 year had passed since the war ended. The galaxy had changed in ways that few could have imagined. The rebuilt Galactic Council met regularly now, with representatives from 50 species sitting in a circular chamber where all voices carried equal weight. The old hierarchies were gone. The age of empires had ended. Something new was growing in its place. Captain Daejung stood at a viewing port on the council station, watching ships come and go. Human vessels moved alongside alien craft, sometimes in mixed formations. Trade routes that had been closed during the war were now busier than ever. Species that had been enemies 12 months ago were now partners in reconstruction efforts. Commander Hannah joined him at the window. President Jiwoo arrives in an hour. The security detail is ready. Daejun nodded. This would be the first time Earth's president addressed the full Galactic Council. It was a momentous occasion, one that would set the tone for humanity's role in galactic affairs for generations to come. How is the reconstruction progressing? He asked. Head of schedule in most areas, Hannah reported. The Thalan homeworld's orbital infrastructure is 70% restored. Morvath Prime has full power and life support again. The smaller worlds that were damaged are receiving aid from multiple species, not just us. That was perhaps the most significant change. The war had taught the galaxy a hard lesson about cooperation. Species that had previously competed now worked together, recognizing that unity made them stronger. Or perhaps they simply feared what might happen if they gave humanity another reason to go to war. Jung preferred to think it was the former, but he was pragmatic enough to acknowledge the latter might be true. Counselor Vrex approached them. Moving more icily now than he had 6 months ago, time and medical treatment had healed his physical wounds. The mental ones would take longer. Captain Daejun, Vrex greeted him with genuine warmth. I wanted to thank you personally before the president's address. The supplies your people sent to our agricultural colonies saved thousands from starvation. We are neighbors now, Daejun replied. Neighbors help each other. Rex's mandibles clicked in what Daejun had learned was a Thalen expression of gratitude. We were fools to see you as threats. You are the best thing that has happened to this galaxy in centuries. After Vrex left, Hannah smiled slightly. He was trying to kill you a year ago. A year ago, I was his enemy, Daejun said. Now I am his ally. People can change when given the chance. Across the station, in a training facility that had once been a military command center, Commander Yuna ran a combat simulation for a mixed group of pilots. Humans, Thalen, Morvath, and half a dozen other species worked together, learning how to fight as a coordinated unit. Blue Squadron. You are being too predictable, Yuna called out over the communication channel. The enemy knows you will break left. Surprise them. Break right instead. The alien pilots struggled at first. They were used to rigid formation flying, to following orders exactly as given. Human pilots trained differently. They learned to think independently, to adapt to changing situations, to trust their instincts. One of the Thalen pilots, a young female named Kira, finally got it right. She broke formation at the perfect moment, caught the simulated enemy by surprise, and scored a kill, Yuna said. That is what I want to see. Use your mind, not just your training. After the session ended, Kira approached Yuna nervously. Commander, may I ask a question? Of course. Why are you teaching us? We fought against you. We killed your people. Why help us become better fighters? Yuna considered the question carefully. Because the next threat the galaxy faces might not be as understanding as humanity. There are species out there we have not met yet, dangers we have not encountered. If we are going to survive, we need to be strong together. That means teaching you everything we know, even if it means we could use that knowledge against you someday. Even then, Yuna confirmed. We are not afraid of strong neighbors. We are afraid of weak ones that someone else can conquer and use against us. Better that you can defend yourselves. This philosophy extended across human activities in the post-war galaxy. Dr. Sungho's research. Teams worked with alien scientists, sharing technology and knowledge freely. Medical advances from Earth saved lives on dozens of worlds. Agricultural techniques developed for harsh colony environments helped feed populations that had been struggling. Some humans questioned this generosity. Why give away advantages that had helped them win the war? But Earth's leaders understood something the old council had not. Security does not come from keeping others weak. It comes from making everyone strong enough to resist threats in the council chamber. President Ji Woo prepared for her address. She was a small woman, barely 5 feet tall, with gray hair and eyes that missed nothing. She had led Earth through the war, making the difficult decisions that had brought victory. Now she faced an even harder challenge, building the peace. Daejun escorted her to the speaker's platform. Representatives from 50 species watched silently. Some looked at her with gratitude, others with lingering resentment, a few with outright fear. Gu began speaking, her voice strong, despite her small frame. 1 year ago, humanity declared war on the Galactic Council. We did so not because we wanted to fight, but because we saw no other choice. You threatened our colonies. You demanded our submission. You treated us as children who needed to be disciplined. We disagreed. She paused, letting the words sink in. Today I stand before you not as a conqueror, but as a partner. Humanity could have taken advantage of our victory. We could have demanded tribute. We could have enslaved populations. We could have done all the terrible things that victorious empires have done throughout history, but we did not. Do you know why? The chamber was silent. Everyone waited for her answer. "'Cause we remember," Giwu continued. "We remember what it was like to be weak, to be threatened, to face extinction and survive only through determination and luck. Earth's history is filled with empires that rose and fell. We have seen what happens when power is abused. We have learned through pain and suffering that true strength lies not in dominating others, but in lifting them up." High Arkankelis stood from his seat. "President Jiwu, may I speak?" "Of course." Khalees moved to the center of the chamber, his crystalline body catching the light. "I am 3,000 years old. I have seen much in my long life. I helped build the old council, helped establish the rules that governed the galaxy for centuries. I thought we were creating something good, something lasting. But we were wrong." He turned to face the assembled representatives. "We became comfortable. We forgot that power requires responsibility. We used our strength to bully rather than to protect. And when a young species refused to bow, we sought to destroy them. It was arrogance, and it nearly destroyed us all." Kellis looked at Jiwu. "Humanity saved us from ourselves. They showed us that strength without wisdom is merely violence. They defeated us in war, then showed mercy and peace. They have given us a second chance. I pray we do not waste it." The chamber erupted in a standing ovation. Species that had fought against humanity now applauded the human president. It was a remarkable sight, one that would have been unthinkable a year earlier. Giwu waited for silence, then continued. "The new Galactic Council represents something different. Here, every species has a voice. Large or small, old or young, everyone matters. We will make decisions through consensus, not through force. We will protect the weak, not exploit them. We will encourage growth, not suppress it. This is the galaxy humanity wishes to build. We hope you will help us." As the session concluded, Daijun watched alien representatives approach Jiwu, offering cooperation and friendship. The old fears were fading, replaced by something better. Something like hope. Later that evening, Daijun stood again at the viewing port. Hannah found him there, as she often did. "What are you thinking about?" she asked. "The cost," he admitted. 117,000 humans dead. 3.5 million aliens. For what? To teach a lesson that should not have required a war? You did what you had to do, Hannah said gently. The council left us no choice. I know, but that does not make it easier. They stood in silence for a moment. Then Hannah said, "Do you think it will last? This peace?" Daijun considered the question. "For a while? Maybe a generation. Maybe longer. But eventually someone will challenge it. Someone will test whether humanity still has the will to fight. That is the nature of power. It must be tested. And when that day comes, we will be ready," Daijun said quietly. "That is what Earth teaches us. Always be ready. Always be strong. But also always be wise enough to know when strength is necessary and when it is not. That balance is what makes us human." Across the station, in a small cafe that had become popular with mixed species groups, a Thalen child sat with her parents. She pointed at a human officer walking by. "Mama, is that one of the soldiers who defeated us?" The mother looked at the human, then at her daughter. "Yes, child. Are they scary?" The mother thought about how to answer. A year ago, she would have said yes without hesitation. Humans were terrifying. They were monsters who brought death and destruction. But now, after living under human occupation, after seeing how they treated the defeated, after receiving aid and assistance from the very people who had conquered her world, she had a different perspective. "They can be scary when they need to be," she told her daughter. "But they can also be kind. They are strong, but they use their strength to protect, not to hurt. We were wrong to fear them. We should have welcomed them." The child watched the human walk away. "I want to be strong like them when I grow up, then study hard," her mother said. "Learn from them. They have much to teach us." Now, this scene repeated across the galaxy. A new generation was growing up, one that saw humans not as conquerors, but as partners. Children who would never know the fear their parents had felt. Young people who would build the future alongside humanity rather than in opposition to it. In the council chamber, Dayung gave one final address before returning to Earth. Humanity came to the stars, seeking a place to belong. We found a galaxy that saw us as inferior. So we proved our worth the only way you would accept, through force. But that was not the goal. It was never the goal. We wanted only what every species wants. Recognition, respect, a place at the table where decisions are made. He looked around at the assembled representatives. You gave us that place through your defeat. We accept it with humility and responsibility. Humanity will defend this new council. We will protect the weak. We will stand against tyranny. But we will not rule. That is not our way. We are partners, not masters. Friends, not overlords. Remember that. Remember what brought us to this moment? And make sure we never need to remind you again. As Dayung's ship left the station, heading back toward Earth, he allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. The war was over. The peace was holding. The galaxy was changing for the better. Humanity had proven itself, not just in war, but in the wisdom to stop fighting when victory was achieved. It would not last forever. Nothing did. But for now, for this moment, the galaxy knew peace. And at the heart of that peace stood humanity. Strong enough to inspire fear, wise enough to inspire trust, and compassionate enough to inspire hope. The terror that had erupted in the Galactic Council when humanity declared war had transformed into something unexpected. Not submission, not resentment, but respect. And from respect, friendship could grow. The galaxy had learned that humanity was dangerous when threatened. Now it was learning that humanity was valuable when befriended. That was the real victory. Not the battles won, but the peace that followed. Not the fear inspired, but the hope created. And as Earth's sun grew larger in the view screen, Darjun allowed himself to believe that maybe, just maybe, it had all been worth it.